Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taormina.
Welcome to OAA Now. Here I'm Sammy Taormina, blogger around the OAA, the host of Last Week Brain Cells, and the host of Between 2 Minutes on Orion Neighborhood Television. I'd like to welcome those watching on the Local Voice on SoundCloud and those watching on Orion Neighborhood Television. A lot to talk about here this week here on the podcast. Obviously, we had some big breaking news this last night. Also, we're going to look at the boys basketball matchups as we gear up for the final week of boys basketball of the regular season. We're going to look at the matchups for the districts. Also, and a lot to look at as we head into the final weeks of the winter season. So, without further ado, let's start our main story here. Some big football news here out of Bloomfield Hills. Talked to two very accurate sources, and they confirmed to me that Scott Merchant is the new head football coach at Bloomfield Hills. He'll take over for Coach Dan Loria, who stepped down this offseason. Obviously, you look at we know what Merchant brings. He was at Lawrence. He was at Chippewa Valley for a long while, and then he stepped down to take over the head coaching job at Lawrence Tech. In Southfield, and then he stepped down on Monday to take the Bloomfield Hills job. So when you really look at, what Merchant brings, it's legendary. He's been a state championship coach. He's led Chippewa Valley to really high prominence, especially in the Macomb Area Conference Red. You can't question his record. You really can't. And to bring him into this conference, when you have legendary names in this conference, he just adds to that. He really does. You look at the community impact, what he brings to the community, it's a big, big deal. It is a huge deal. Because you look at what Laurie did in his 13 years at Bloomfield Hills, he did a really nice job. I mean, the record doesn't indicate it. He led them to 3 9-1 seasons. He led Bloomfield Hills Gloucester to a deep playoff run, state semifinal appearance in D4. So when you really look at what Merchant brings to the fold here, and if you're in the Bloomfield Hills community, you're really excited for this. You're really excited for this one. You're really excited to see where this team goes under Merchant's watch. You're really excited. Obviously, what lured him to the job was the fact that his son is in the Bloomfield Hills program. And I totally understand, you know what I mean? I totally understand, the father-son component. I totally understand it. Father wanted to coach his son. Or a father wanted to coach his kid. And, I totally get it and I totally understand it. I mean, I know a lot of coaches that have coached their sons, especially in this game of football. And in other sports, you look at Berkeley coach Joe Thurmo coaching his 2 sons, both playing boys basketball. You look at what Lake Orion coach Chris Bell did. I mean, coach Kyle Bell. You look at so this was a perfect opportunity for Merchant, to come into a football program that is not, you look at the record, you look at the standing, you look at the stats, and they don't lie. Numbers don't lie. I mean, last 3 years, Bloomfield Hills has been 5-22. And pretty much one of those teams that, has been in the blue. I think with this hire, this means that Bloomfield Hills, could they be back in the red? It's a possibility. Obviously, what this brings to Bloomfield Hills is it's going to bring a lot of a lot of attention. The question for me for Bloomfield Hills is, obviously, Merchant's going to have to go through a transition period, and it's going to have to happen during the season. He's going to have a long summer to work with them. There are going to be some changes, obviously. You look at the offense that Merchant ran when he was at Chippewa Valley. It's kind of almost similar to what Coach Dan Lauria ran. It's a spread. The question for me is the personnel there. The personnel at Bloomfield Hills is not. But he knows the kids really well. He knows the kids really well. So that's an advantage there for them. Really is. Obviously, everybody's going to look at the pedigree that he has. Everybody's going to look at it. But you really got to look at it from the home side of things, wanting to coach his son. Obviously, very well known in the community of Bloomfield Hills. So that's how I'm approaching it. That's how I'm approaching this hire. That's how I'm approaching it. From a football standpoint, people are going to ask me, does this put Bloomfield Hills on top of the division? Does the Merchant hire put them on top? Not quite. Because you look at last year with Bloomfield Hills, they really, really struggled. Last few years, as I mentioned, 5-22. In 3 years. So you look at that division now, and you say to yourself, okay, Farmington lost a lot of talent a year ago, but they still got a good program there. Coach Jason Albrecht's done a really nice job of that program. Seaholm had a rough year last year, but they were a playoff team. They should be better this year. They should be better. Oak Park's another one. They've had some years where they've had some really down years. But they should be better this year because of who they got coming back. And then there's North Farmington. North Farmington last season had a nice year. They got a quarterback in there. But there's still some questions when it comes to their defense. So, and then Troy lost a lot last year. Troy Athens, we don't know. Despite them having Nick and Piggott, there's just some question marks. When you look at Troy Athens going in the future, there's a lot of questions. So Merchant brings is a lot of notoriety. The question for me is, how can he build Bloomfield Hills' program back? How can he bring him back? First thing it starts, you got to have 3 programs. You got to have, and I mean 3 programs. This is where program strength comes into play. You have to build your program there because there's been years where Bloomfield Hills has only had 2 teams, a JV and a varsity. And you're in a school with a lot of, with almost, I think, 1,800 kids. You can get talent there. You can really get talent there. You look at Bloomfield Hills Middle School. They're growing as a community. They got 2 middle schools now. They just turned the Bloomfield Hills Losser campus into a new middle school. I think it's called North Hills. But when you look at the community there, that's starting to grow. And then you look at, so that's where the first place you start at when building a program's in the youth levels. You got to look at, okay, how is the youth levels looking? You got to look at that. And then you look at your middle school program. You look at both your teams there. And then, of course, you got to build a freshman program. The freshmen, and then you have the JV program, and then, of course, there's varsity. That is basically the youth levels and the middle school levels are going to be the key for Coach Merchant. That's going to be the key. because that's where everything starts. That's where everything begins. You look at, of course, the kids that are up at middle school hanging into high school. They're going to have to go through that transition. They're going to go through that period to where they're going to have to build that. And then you look at the JV and the varsity levels, people are going to say, well, this program's been knocked down so much that we can make some noise ourselves. We can win some games. Why not? We can win at least 7, 8 games and maybe get in the postseason. Do I expect Bloomfield Hills to get in the playoffs in their first year? No. But you look at that schedule. They've got, you're playing in the blue, and then your non-league games. I got to take another look, but I know they got Seaholmes on there. That's a conference game. They got to play Groves. But I got to take a look at their non-conference. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this works. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how this works over there. Because, yes, it's a big hire. Yes, it's a game-changing hire. But the talent's not as what it was at Chippewa Valley for Merchant. You don't have world-class speed over there at Bloomfield Hills like you did at Chippewa Valley. It really isn't. So it's going to come down to workings mentality. That's really what it's going to be for them. If Merchant can get that worksman mentality over there, then it could be a big-time game changer. Because right now, what I see Bloomfield Hills right now, they have an opportunity to grow as a program, but it's going to take maybe at least 2 or 3 years to basically say, is this program back? Is this program back to where they were when John Paddock was the quarterback? And obviously, it's going to start with balance. They're going to have to run the ball a lot. They're going to have to throw it. Defense has to be shored up, obviously. I think defense is going to be the biggest challenge for them heading into this year. There's a lot of question marks. There really is. So when I look at Bloomfield Hills' outlook this year, you really can't judge a team right now. You really can't, especially in February, because, we haven't done spring sports yet. We got summer. That's when during the summertime I usually do my summer update with football coaches. So I expect that'll happen this year. Before we gear up for football season. Just recently, I just had to figure out my top 10 teams and right now and for the summer. So, I just figured that out just on Monday here. So I just had to figure that out. So really, when you look at the hire Merchant, it's a game changer for sure. It's a big hire. On personal standpoint, you know what I mean? Like, Dad wanted to coach his kid, and I totally understand it. I totally get it. There's going to be some challenges ahead for Merchant going forward with Bloomfield Hills. The question is, can he bring that program back, and can he sustain success there? That is the big question for Bloomfield Hills. That's the big question. When you're in a division with Farmington, North Farmington, Seaholm, Oak Park, Troy, Athens, you're going to be in for a dogfight every week. And then you're going to have to see a red opponent. I've been hearing for Bloomfield Hills, it could be West Bloomfield. The pros to having the for Merchant having the Bloomfield Hills job, it's one school. There's no 2 schools. when he was at Chippewa Valley, of course, he had to deal with Macomb, Dakota. So there's that bonus. Those middle school kids are going to go to Bloomfield Hills. I know he's got to deal with the Birmingham Brother Rice component, but I think honestly, the Bloomfield Hills, is a great fit for him. I think it's a great fit for him. I mean, he's from there. He lives there. Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense for him to take the job there. You know what I mean? And it's a lot easier on his on traveling, of course. You know what I mean? Obviously, you kind of look at, you look at other coaches. You know what I mean? Travel these days, it's challenging. It can be. So for Merchant, I think he's at the right place. He's at the right place. His kids are there. I mean, his son is there. Gets a chance to coach him. But we'll see what happens with him. So we'll see what happens with Bloomfield Hills. And I think that's going to be the key going forward is can the Blackhawks get some success in the Merchant and can they sustain it long term? That's going to be the challenge for them is can they do that? And if they can, I think it's a very dangerous team. I expect the next few years they'll probably be in the red. But if they don't, you know what I mean? Then questions are going to mount. So for Bloomfield Hills, home run hire, obviously. Game-changing hire. Question for me is going to be is can they sustain success? That's the big-time question mark for Bloomfield Hills. In the case of Avondale, I know the new coach, but I'm not going to confirm it as of yet. Just going to wait for them to confirm it via via release or like any confirmation. The Bloomfield Hills hired 2 very accurate sources confirmed that to me. So if you wonder about the sources, 2 very accurate sources did confirm to me that hire of Scott Merchant over at Bloomfield Hills. So, so if you wonder where my sources are, 2 very accurate sources confirmed that to me. So, okay, now we're going to go from football. We're going to talk basketball here. Districts came out for the boys. As a lot of the matches I've been talking about all week, past few weeks, the matchups of the postseason. Now they're officially out. The MHA did release the seedings, obviously. Obviously you look at the districts surrounding OA schools. It's like if it's a 5-team district, the 4-5 play on that Monday, play the 1 seed. And then in the 16 districts, the 6 play the 3, winner plays the 2, 4 and the 5 play each other, with the winner playing the top seed. So that's how the bracket worked. There's not a lot of 7-team districts. There's no 8-team districts here with these teams. And there's certainly not 14 districts. I know there are 2 4-team districts in the girls' side of things. So we'll break those brackets down next week when the girls' brackets are officially released. So, and then, but also we got to give a shout out to Clarkson Wrestling. They're in the state quarterfinals. They're in Kalamazoo at Wing Stadium. They're going to be taking on Temperance Bedford. Most likely a chance to see either Novi, Detroit Catholic Central, or Davison, which is going to be a very difficult matchup. So shout out to Clarkson Wrestling for getting to the Elite 8 at Wing Stadium. So shout out to Clarkson Wrestling there. Also cheerleading, obviously. They've started their districts. You got Clarkson, Lake Orion, Oxford. You got Rochester Adams, and Stony Creek are also in there as well. So a lot to look at. A lot to look at this winter when you look at wrestling and competitive cheers. So, so now let's go back to basketball here. As I mentioned with the brackets, we're going to start off with Division 2. We're going to start off over at Pontiac, Notre Dame over at Pontiac. This was a really tight district throughout. Now you're looking at the 6th seed Look at 16, of course, Macomb Lutheran North. They're going to be taking on Pontiac. Massillon Lampier is playing Bluebeers Cranbrook Kingswood. Pontiac Notre Dame Prep and Birmingham Detroit Country Day each had the 2 top seeds. Notre Dame Prep, of course, having that big win against Oxford last week, which was really stunning. Jake Champagne at 38 points to lead Oxford in that one. So we'll preview Oxford's district in a couple minutes here. But when you look at this district here, 3 teams really had a chance to win it. I mean, you look at Notre Dame Prep, obviously with Joe Canassis there. They got Whalen there as well. He's had a nice year for them, for Coach Whitney Robinson. Birmingham Detroit Country Day. They played a tough schedule. They played some really good teams. I know they played Avondale earlier in the year and got shellacked. They had a big win against Plymouth Canton as well. So when I look at Pontiac's Avenue, they should win their first round game. They should win it. I mean, you got players like the Henry brother. You got the Henry brothers. You got J.J. Claudio. I mean, Pontiac's had a nice year. They really have had a really good season. But, when you look at the path, and I think they got a chance against Detroit Country. They got a chance. But they're going to have to play well. They're going to have to play really, really well if they're going to want to get by them and get to the district final. Because Notre Dame Prep has the best avenue to get there. Their avenue is really, really good right now. So it's going to be a tall order for them. It's going to be a really, really tall order for them if they're going to want to get by their district. I mean, because they're going to have to go through Country Day, and then they're going to have to go through Notre Dame Prep. So Pontiac's got it really, really difficult heading in their district. They got it really difficult. And then you look at another district here, District 60. This will be over at East Point. This is where Harper Woods is. Harper Woods end up getting the 5th seed. They're going to play East Point. That winner is going to take on Centerline. And then you have St. Clair Shore South Lake versus Harper Woods Chandler Park Academy. For Harper Woods, it's been a complete miserable year for them. It's been really rough for Coach Juwan Porter. It's been rough. I know they're a very young team. They got to start playing Lenage West. Who's gonna be a big time player in the next few years? He's gonna be a big time player. When I look at the matchup with East Point, Myron Baylor should have a big game here against East Point. East Point does not have a lot of size. They really don't. The question is, Harper Woods, it's going to be their game of attrition because they play Lake Orion. They got to play Oxford. They got to play Seaholm. That's all in 1 week. And that's brutal. Good news for Harper Woods is all 3 of those teams are at home. And then they get to play East Point. So technically that's 4 games in 7 days. So that's not going to be it's not going to be easy for Coach Porter and the Pioneers. That's not going to be easy. And then if you win that game against East Point, then you're dealing with Centerline. That's a terrible matchup for them, for Harper Woods. That's an absolute terrible matchup. Centerline has had a nice year. They're having a really good year. Panthers are well coached. I mean, they got proven athletes. They got a lot of experience, too. Other side, you got St. Clair Shore South Lake taking on Harper Woods Chandler Park Academy. That's going to be really interesting. I think that could be a tight game between the Cavs and the Eagles. It could be really tight. See how that one goes. Then District 61. This is going to be over at it's going to be over in Detroit. You got Ferndale University and Hazel Park. That one's at Hazel Park. So Ferndale University takes on Hazel Park. That winner's taking on Warren Lincoln. Detroit Osborne takes on Ferndale. That winner's going to take on Detroit Pershing. So, if you're Coach Josh Nix, you've had a nice year. You've had a nice year. Now I get to go play Hazel Park, who has one of the most dynamic players in CJ Goff. And now you get to play them. It's a difficult matchup for them. But Hazel Park, though, but then again, Ferndale U's played a much tougher schedule than Hazel Park. I mean, this is going to be, and I know Hazel Park's in the first year of a new coach, and they're rebuilding that program over there. So it's going to be a challenge for them. It's going to be a big challenge for them. Ferndale University, they've made some strides. They got their best win is Stony Creek. That's their best win this year. And they did it on the road. They got proven players. They got experience. Whoever wins that one's going to have to deal with Warren Lincoln. Warren Lincoln's legit. They are legit. I mean, the A's are senior heavy this year. Ready to make one more run at it. Well coached. Well talented. I mean, they played a tough schedule. Played a lot of showcase games. I mean, Warren Lincoln's the real deal. There's a reason they're defending Division II state champions. But Ferndale's in here. They were the defending Division II state champions a 2 years ago. Juan Rickman's done a nice job. They got a star player in Ethan Vineyard. They got Toronto Adams. I mean, Ferndale's played in one of the toughest divisions in the state, which is the Red. And then, if they knock off Detroit Osborne, they should, then they get to go play Detroit Pershing. We know how good the Doughboys are. We know the tradition of Detroit Pershing basketball. We know what they bring. We know what they bring to the dance. That should be a really interesting ball game. That should be. It should be. So, we'll see how that one goes. And the winners will play on that Friday night. Most likely, it's probably going to be Warren Lincoln against either Detroit, Pershing, or Ferndale. It'll be most likely be that scenario. How I'm looking at it. Difficult matchup. Really difficult matchup. Then let's go to Division I. We're going to start with District 22. This will be over at Groves. You got A&T taking on Oak Park. That winner's taking on Birmingham Brother Rice. And then you have Seaholm and Bloomfield Hills. That winner taking on Groves. So when I look at this district here, and I think this is a unique one here. Everybody says this could be Groves versus Brother Rice. I talked to Sean Cotter about this district. He says Birmingham Brother Rice is going to win this district. I'm going to disagree on that. Because anytime you're at home, home court matters. Home court matters. And Groves is at home. But there's some challenge marks. When you look at the first one with Oak Park and A&T might have a chance here against Oak Park. Oak Park, yes, they got some great shooters on that team for Coach Joanne Shepard, and they played a tougher schedule. A&T can go in there and beat them. They can beat them. They really can. So, Oak Park's really vulnerable for an upset. They really are. And A&T, they haven't had the greatest of seasons, but they're right there. They're right in that conversation. I think that could be a possible upset right there. That could be really possible. But then that winner is basically going to get sentenced to go play Birmingham Brother Rice. We know how good Birmingham Brother Rice is. Obviously, everybody talks about Greg Grays over there, the former Farmington transfer. We know how good Coach Ricky Palmer is as a coach. So that could be really interesting. It's a difficult matchup for either A&T and Oak Park when they have to go play 'em. Really difficult. And then there's a rematch between Seaholm and Bloomfield Hills. Bloomfield Hills is probably one of the best guards in the game with Deron Mason. You got Carter Canfield there. I mean, the question for me with Bloomfield Hills and Coach Brian Canfield is going to be size. That's always going to be the question for me with them. Seaholm's got a lot of size. I've been hearing that they were doing the youth movement over there. When you look at players like Everett Words, Brody Filmaker, you look at Evan Pereiro and company. But Charlie Gorska's been the key for Seaholm the whole season. He's been the key. Yes, the record's very deceiving. But you look at in some of those games, Seaholm's been really competitive. They've really been in those games. We lost by 10 to Oxford. So when I look at this game here, this could be the makings of a really good game. This could be. I mean, you got to look at the job Spencer Adams done in his first year over there. It was going to be a very tough rebuild. Then you look at the job that Brian Canfield's done at Bloomfield Hills. He's done a really nice job. Unfortunately for Bloomfield Hills, they league dreams are out of the equation, but they do have a lot of experience coming back next year. So Bloomfield Hills will be right back in it again next year. They'll be right back in it. This should be a really good game. I mean, the last time these two teams played was back in November. Bloomfield Hills beat Seaholm. I think it was 42-38. That was at Bloomfield Hills. Now it's at a neutral site. This should be a really interesting game. And that winner takes on Groves. Seaholm's no stranger to Groves, obviously. They played earlier in the year at Seaholm. Groves really had no issue with Seaholm. Seaholm had a bad night shooting. Obviously with Groves, you got Simpson, Gibson, McKinley, and they won the red title this year. So that's that. To that, they won the red this year. So that's going to make it really difficult. So people are going to ask me about that district and say, what are you going to look for? If it's Birmingham, Bartlett Rice, Birmingham, Groves, who would it be? I'm confident in Groves because I think they can get it done. They have championship experience. Brother Rice, yes, they've been through the Catholic League. They've been through it. And they won a district last year. But this is Groves. This is Coach Mark West's team. This is Coach Mark West. It's going to be interesting. It'll be really interesting. If those two teams meet in the district final. It'll be really interesting. District number, let's go with district number 24. This one's over at it's over at Livonia. You got Livonia Churchill takes on Livonia Stevenson. That winner's taking on Redford Thurston. And then you have Livonia Franklin versus Farmington. That winner's taking on North Farmington. When I look at this one, interesting. Really interesting. Reason why I say this is because Redford Thurston's the number 1 seed. But I don't feel like they should be a number 1 seed. I just don't feel it. I think the two Farmington schools should have been the two teams that were seeded. But Redford Thurston's had a nice year under a first-year coach. They've had a nice year. What's going to be interesting is that game between Livonia Churchill and Livonia Stevenson is going to be really interesting. Livonia Stevenson won both games this year by a total of 10 points. One was a 6-point game. The other was a 4-point game. And Livonia Stevenson, but it's always hard to beat a team 3 times. It would not surprise me at all if those two teams were to go and beat Redford Thurston. It really wouldn't surprise me because they play in a much more tougher conference. Not being mean to the Western Wing, but playing in the KLAA East, that's a tough say. That's tough. That's difficult. And then on the other side, you got Farmington, who I think should knock off Livonia Franklin. And you're looking at a rematch between Farmington and North Farmington, which that could be really, really interesting. Because Farmington has showed a lot of significant strides this year. They're well coached. Byron Johnson does a really nice job of that team. Farmington plays the ultimate team game. They play the ultimate team game. But they've had some lapses. North Farmington, they rely a lot on Rob Smith to carry them. They also have the Negotians coaching. Todd Negotian, one of the best coaches in the game. His father, Tom, is on the bench. Yeah, Pete Mantillo there as well. What makes this game interesting is Rob Smith is the key. Rob Smith is. Because if he struggles, North Farmington's in trouble. They've had some games where they just have not looked good. There's been some games they just have not looked very good at all. So when I look at this one, and North Farmington survived back in December, it was a very tight game with Farm. I think it was 47-41. Or actually 50-44. Really tight game between those two. Farmington plays the ultimate team game. Would it surprise me if Farmington beat North Farmington? It would not. Because Farmington plays the ultimate team game. Would it surprise me if North Farmington beat Farmington? No. Because North Farmington's had Farmington's number the last few years. So, that'll be really interesting if those teams were to meet in the district semifinals, which they most likely would. And then, I still think North Farmington's the favorite coming out of that district. But, Farmington could have a huge say about it. Redford Thurston could have a say about it. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And then, let's go to District 25. This one you have Walled Lake Northern taking on Lakeland, the Battle of Bougie Lake. Winners taking on top-seeded Orchard Lake St. Mary's. And then you have West Bloomfield taking on Walled Lake Central. Okay. People ask me about this question, and they ask me who, you look at Orchard Lake St. Mary's, they're the defending Division I state champions. They got basically the same team from last year. They're probably better. Obviously, you have the star players there. You have, you have Jane Saber there. You have Trey McKinney there. I mean, okay. I've heard enough there with St. Mary's. I honestly, Coach Ty Cober's team, I've heard enough. Lakeland and Walled Lake Northern, both teams split their season series. Lakeland, when I look at that, Walled Lake Northern, Lakeland beat Waterford Mott in triple overtime on their home floor. Walled Lake Northern beat Walled Lake Central, held them to 32 points. So it kind of tells you how impressive Ryan Negotian's defense was in that game. Now, they've had some games where they've had some really, really unique losses. They've had some games where we're just going like, what are you doing? What are you doing? So, in this one here, this is the rubber match. Whoever wins basically getting sentenced. That's basically what it is. On the other side, you got a rematch. West Bloomfield won that game last year against Walled Lake Central. I know Walled Lake Central is going to be motivated, wanting revenge. Here's why I think West Bloomfield is going to win that game. Here's why. West Bloomfield played a tougher schedule. They have one of the best guards in the game, Corey Pittman. And you look at Walled Lake Central, they're a good team. They beat Waterford in overtime the other night. But there's one fatal flaw that West Bloomfield has, though, and that's their defense. Their defense has been just absolutely atrocious all season. They've gotten over 50 points each game. That's bad. That's bad. I mean, if you're going to win games, especially in the postseason, your defense better be coming ready to play. I mean, West Bloomfield, they can rely on outscoring teams, but against a team like Walled Lake Central, you're going to need both sides of the ball to play well. You're going to need your defense to play well. You're going to need the offense to play well. So I could see why West Bloomfield could win that game, but I can also see a lot of reasons West Bloomfield could lose that game. And I know Walled Lake Central there is a very good, well-coached program. I think Chip's done a really nice job of that team. He's done a really nice job. So we'll see what happens in that one. But when you look at that district as a whole, I still don't think nobody's touching Orchard Lake St. Mary's. Orchard Lake St. Mary's can go at least 11, 12 deep. That's how scary they are. Depends how much of a heart Coach Todd Colbert has. Really does. So we'll see. We'll see. District 26, this is going to be over at Lapeer. You got Lapeer and Davison taking on Oxford. Lapeer and Davison, that winner's taking on Oxford. And then you have Schwartz Creek and Holly with that winner taking on Grand Blanc. Oh, boy. Oh, Nelly. I've been saying this on the Fish Drive podcast. I've been saying this for weeks. I still cannot believe Oxford's got the number one seed in this district. I still cannot believe it. Because I thought Grand Blanc would pass them. I thought they would pass them. Especially after that loss Oxford took to Pontiac Notre Dame Prep. But what helped Oxford was Grand Blanc and Muskegon canceled their game because of the snowstorm. So it could have been different if Grand Blanc played Muskegon. But that's beside the point. First round matchups, Davison against Lapeer. This is going to be an interesting one. It always is when Davison and Lapeer play each other. They played once earlier in the year. Davison won that 70-43. Davison's been an interesting enigma all year long. Played Oxford first game of the year, got tortured 64-39. They've beaten the bad teams. Their best win of the year is Lake Fenton. Lake Fenton's solid. But when they play good teams, they struggle. I've looked at their record. They play good teams, they struggle. Lapeer, on the other hand, they're going through it this year. They got a new coach in Jack Tuttle. And Coach Jack taking over there. Coach Jack Tuttle taking over there. And it's at Lapeer. So, could this be an upset trap? Absolutely. Could we see a rematch between Davison and Oxford? Absolutely. Oxford had the edge in that game, but you never know with Davison. If Lapeer plays Oxford, Oxford's got the advantage, but playing at home. So, either way, it's a trap game for Oxford, regardless. Either way it is. And I know I talked to Aaron Elling, Brendan Elling's dad. Big supporter of the podcast. He's done Oxford's done a really nice job this year. Obviously, 9 seniors. You look at with them. 9 seniors. Jake Champagne's had a nice year. Luke Stelfen's had a nice year. Drew Katie's had a nice year. Drew Katie's had a nice year. When I look at Oxford, this is the perfect opportunity for them to win the district. The problem for them is they got to go by Grand Blanc. And Brendan Elling's really had a breakout year for them. They've really had a breakout year. When you look at Oxford's scenario, it's a good scenario for them. On the other side, you got Swords Creek and Holly. Swords Creek's won both games against Holly this year. But Holly's always dangerous. Ask Davison that question last year. I think Coach Steve DeHart's team can go and beat Swords Creek. I think they got a chance. But it's not going to be easy. Swords Creek's won both meetings with the Bronchos. Holly's not the same team they were last year, though. So, but you never know with Holly. Swords Creek's had a nice year. They've had a really good year. That winner takes on Grand Blanc. And Grand Blanc, we know, played a tough schedule. They've had some flaws. They've had some flaws, Grand Blanc has. I know a lot of people have been thinking about an Oxford Grand Blanc district final. Is it possible? Sure it is. Sure it's possible. But you never know. You never know. So we'll see what happens. District 27, this will be at Avondale. You got Lake Orion taking on Waterford Kettering. That winner's taking on Waterford Mott. Then Clarkson and Avondale. I've been saying this on the pod for the last few weeks. This is the perfect scenario for Lake Orion. Yes, you got to play on that Monday against Waterford Kettering. Waterford Kettering's really struggled all year long. But this team matches up really well with Waterford Mott. Obviously, Waterford Mott's got the play of Jacoby Manyweathers. Tori Robinson's really emerged. Gavin Ort, Wayne Stevens has really been emerged for Coach Jeff Jason. But when you look at the conferences, the White and the Lakes Valley, Waterford Mott has had some games where they went overtime. And I know Lake Orion should be motivated after what happened to them last year when Waterford Mott won 50-32. A lot of that was the play of Manyweathers. I think Devin White had a big game for them as well, hitting threes. You look at Lake Orion and you say to yourself, okay, you got a lot of experience. You got Zach Parks there. So when you look at Coach Jose Andrades, what he's done with his team, it should be a really interesting matchup. But having a game under your belt, it's eerily similar to that of last year for Lake Orion when it comes to the similarities. Because of you played Waterford Kettering last year, then you had to go play Waterford Mott. It's the same scenario. And then, so if you're Lake Orion, this is, I think, the perfect scenario for this team. Perfect. Absolutely perfect for this team. Despite being the 4 seed. It'll be interesting to see how this one goes. It would be really interesting to see. But I think Obviously, then you have the MJ Long storyline there. I mean, of course, when he played at Lake Orion, when he tried out at Lake Orion, didn't make the team and then moved to Waterford. I mean, so that's an interesting storyline there. And then on the other side, you have Jacoby Loris at Avondale. Played at Lake Orion last year. He's at Avondale. He's having a nice year for Coach Jared Thomas. And Avondale gets to play Clarkston. And Avondale's beaten Clarkston twice this year, including a game where they just held Clarkston to 33 points. I have, in my years of seeing Clarkston basketball, I don't think I've ever seen a Clarkston team score 33 points like that. I've never seen it. And Avondale did it. Avondale's not a big team. I mean, they're not. I mean, Justin Greer-Sykes is a heck of a good big man. Jacoby Loris has played well for them. DJ Moody, when he shoots threes, that's scary. When he and Jordan Clayton are shooting threes, that's a team's worst nightmare. It really is. Avondale's had a nice year. They've really had a really nice year. But what they did to Clarkston was just holding them to 9 points in the first half and then holding them to 33 points was just... Now, Clarkston missed a lot of shots, though, but to their defense. But still, holding a team to 33 points, that's scary enough. Really is. So now Clarkston... Avondale is living rent-free in Clarkston's head right now. That's really what's going on there. And if you're Coach Tim Wasilic, you're going to have to figure a way here. You got a size advantage. You went to that advantage, but Avondale went and found other ways to beat you. So now you're going to have to... So I'm curious to see how that chess match is between Wasilic and Thomas, how that's going to play out. Very curious to see how that one's going to play out. That could be a really, really, really tight semifinal. That could be really, really tight. So when you look at this district here, I think Lake Orion's got the best chance here. The best draw. Going through the Waterford schools. Now, people with Waterford are going to say, like, what about us here? What about us here? Waterford had a nice year. Don't get me wrong. They've had a lot of tight games. They have that win against Grand Blanc, which is huge. They have that win against, you look at that game with Milford, they went overtime with them. You look at the game with Walled Lake Central, both games went overtime. Waterford had to survive Walled Lake Central at their place, and then Waterford lost to them at their place. The Lakeland game where that went triple overtime. Does Mott have a chance to win the district? Absolutely they do. I said this before the season started. 4 teams have a chance to win that district. You look at Waterford, Clarkston, Avondale, Lake Orion. Those are 4 teams. I haven't changed anything. Really haven't. Let's look at that district at Rochester. You got Utica taking on Adams. That winner takes on Stony Creek. And then you have Utica Eisenhower taking on Romeo, with that winner taking on Rochester. Rochester's had an incredible year. Number 1 seed, Blue Championship. Max Mull had to miss time with an injury. Jake Tandy's had to miss time with an injury. And yet this team still finds ways to win. Nick Aboa should be, in my opinion, the coach of the year in the division. He should be. Because of what he's done. You want to look at one game in particular? Look at that Stony Creek game on the road. That's all I need to know. Rochester won that game without the two best players. Logan Pleasant played insane that night. Rochester played insane that night. That's all I need to know. Utica Eisenhower Romeo, that's a rematch. Romeo and Ike have split both meetings this year. But I know Romeo won on a last-second buzzer beater. Ike, you guys have been up and down. Anthony Muscat's done a really nice job of that team. So that could be a really interesting ball game. That'll be really interesting. That winner takes on Rochester. So if you're Rochester, you like where you're at right now. But you're not the favorite in your district. Adams is. And Adams is playing in the first round. Adams plays Utica first, and that winner takes on Stony Creek. Stony Creek has not played good at all. They have not. So when I look at this district, and you think about it, Stony Creek's been a team that's been treading water lately. They really have. Adams has been, despite their record, Adams has played a tougher schedule. Now, yes, Stony Creek beat Adams earlier in the year, but that was early. I mean, Adams is a completely different team now. They lost both Langdon brothers. They're now at UD Jesuit, but yet they still find ways to win games. They just knocked out Clarkson at the buzzer beater. Clarkson's a mess right now. I mean, Clarkson's a serious mess right now. They're in trouble. I think Clarkson's in trouble there. With Adams, Trent Lagarde has won him 2 games at the buzzer. Trent Lagarde's the real deal. And they have a win against Rochester. Let's not forget that. So, Trent Lagarde, Candace Flynn are big reasons why Coach Isaiah Novak's team's a favorite in that district. They should have no issue with Utica. I think they're going to get by Stony this time around. I think they're going to get by them. I mean, Stony's got some issues, some real serious issues they got to address. I mean, they got some issues. So we'll see what happens here in that one. But if it's Adams and Rochester in the district final, that could be crazy. That could be a crazy fest over there at Rochester. That could be nuts. And that could happen, too. It really will happen. In our last district, District 29, we got Berkeley taking on Warren Mott. That winner's taking on Royal Oak, and then Troy versus Troy Athens. This is going to be interesting. I mean, Berkeley, Warren Mott, I think Berkeley should win this one. Both teams have kind of really been struggling all year long. I think Berkeley gets their revenge. I think Berkeley wins this one, sets up a rivalry district semifinal. Berkeley taking on Royal Oak and Troy Athens. Berkeley and Royal Oak, of course, that's an interesting game because both those two teams split in the regular season, each winning on their home courts. And Berkeley only lost to Royal by 6. So that could be a fun matchup. And let's not forget, of course, the drive over there from Catalpa to Lexington is not that far. You just got to cross Woodward. Always a fun rivalry when Berkeley plays Royal Oak. When I did my rivalry series column, Berkeley Royal Oak's definitely one of those rivalries that you always look forward to. Then you had Troy versus Troy Athens. Troy's beaten Troy Athens the last 2 times. I mean, Troy's beaten Troy Athens' number. But the game at Athens was really, really tight. 4-point win for Troy over Athens. And it's at a neutral site. And it's always hard to beat a team 3 times. This could be really interesting. I said this before, that Troy was the favorite in this district. Troy's got, obviously because of Mason Parker, Andrew Lake, Leo Pinoza. But Royal Oak, they got the number 1 seed for a reason. They got a great chance here. they got a chance to do wonders. Real great chance. That could be a real classic. I think Wednesday at Royal Oak could be two really tight classic games. See what happens. All right, I'm going to sign off here. Make sure you follow the blog at Sagamay4050 at blogspot.com for latest updates around the OAA. Keep an eye on everything going around the league as well. So we'll see what happens going forward. All right, I'm going to sign off here. Take care. God bless, and I'll see you all next week. Take care. God bless, and I'll see you all next week. God bless.